Hello everybody. This is Ian Williams with the Foreign Press Association in New York, and this week it's the fourth anniversary of the special military operation in the Ukraine. And we know just how special it is because it's still been going on 4 years after it was supposed to take a few weeks. And it's become even more special because somehow the incumbent in the White House isn't quite sure which side he's on after many years. So the situation is very fraught. Journalists in Ukraine are being bombarded as normal with missiles and shells, and of course we've got several cases of journalists being shot at the front by the special military operatives. um, but there's a new departure in this. Kateryna Lisunova, who is with us, she will explain her story, has been, how should we say, cyber bombed almost, in that the secrets, the Russian agents have made public, have doxed her, have made public her name and address and other places in America, which she can explain the legalities of it. But certainly in Europe, I think that's illegal. Its intention is sincerely hostile. And I'm fairly sure if there were any other incumbent in the White House, the US government would treat it very seriously. Katerina, explain your background, where you're from, and how this all came about, because presumably they didn't just pick your name out of a hat as someone to persecute.
100%. First of all, thank you for having me, Ian. And I am a Ukrainian journalist who've been in the United States covering U.S.-Ukraine relationship since 2017. First time I came here to the United States in 2016 to cover elections when President Trump won first term. And then I was covering the elections. And then after that, Ukrainian TV channel, which I was working with, sent me as a permanent correspondent to the United Nations. Then I started to work with BBC Ukrainian service as a freelance contributor, and then Voice of America invited me as a congressional correspondent to cover Congress, which I was doing until the moment when it was closed last year. And now I'm working as a media advisor with a nonprofit Razum for Ukraine, and also a freelance journalist for a few different media. About the case that I have right now, like you said, Russians that doesn't choose out of nowhere people to target and call for persecution. There is a website specifically dedicated and created by Russians to highlight the target list, if I may call it like that, people who they call the big threat
Hit
for
list, I think you
Russia.
call it.
Yeah, hit list, probably, yeah. The people who they call dangerous for Russian Federation, or who's doing, for their point of view, malign activities against Russian Federation. And as their, and here I will quote, they were saying, doing an actions to undermine the goals of so-called special operation in Ukraine, which is basically biggest war since World War II. What they did, they have this website. I will not name this website just from the security point of standpoint, because they did put my personal address there. They put my personal information there, and also described all in colorful pro-Russian propaganda ways how negative I am for Russian Federation. They put it online there for everybody to see, and who knows what to do with that information. So I will not name the website just for the security purposes, but I will tell that if not my personal information, all the description made me feel very proud. And I'm also together with many
It's not somebody you would normally quote, but Mao Zedong in his little red book says, when the enemy attacks us, it's a good thing. We know we're doing the right thing. So just on this one occasion, we'll go along with Chairman Mao.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a sign that it also proves the fact that whatever I was writing, whatever I was doing, whatever interviews I had, whatever coverage I had, apparently been targeting the point exactly precisely the things that they don't want to be targeted. So, which means I did a good job in this coverage, and I'm proud of that. But in the same time, I also think that it's very important for journalistic organizations, for any organizations who support freedom of speech, to underline the criminal activities of Russian Federation, because, as you said in the very beginning, those kind of threatening and targeting or like creating hit lists, it's something that should be saved in history for the future. God bless prosecution of all of those people who creating this war right now, targeting journalists and doing all of this malign activities. So yeah, that's basically the situation that I am with. There are a lot of developments after that happened. Like there is an official FBI investigation happening regarding this case. And I would probably just say that there are a lot of also good people in that website. I'm happy to be in such company, but I wouldn't say that a lot of them, or maybe none of them, actually I've seen had a personal information published there.
So have you had any actual ill effects from the doxing so far?
So far, no, but it's also hard to know, hard to guess. Also, being a Ukrainian journalist, you already surrounded with the people who've been unfortunately killed by Russians already, or they had attempt to be killed. And I have a number of friends who either been targets uh, of Russians, and they had at least one of my friends, Serhiy Sternenko. He's an activist in Ukraine, and he had two assassination attempts on his life already. Also, Victoria Roshchina, a journalist who I knew personally, we were working together, who was tortured and killed by Russians. And I think that her story became more famous than others. Also, another journalist who is also acquaintance of mine, and I covered his story very much, Arkady Babchenko, who had assassination attempt on him as well, and it was interesting. We had a meeting with him, and he had this situation just in a few weeks after we met. We had just we just casually met as a journalist and a group of journalists, and then Russia. It actually was a very good special operation, if I can call it like that, because it's became a cliche word, but. By Ukrainian Secret Service, they've been able to save him by staging his killing, and by doing that, they were able to arrest those one who not who ordered this killing, and
Oh, I
also
remember that case. Yes, it was.
yeah. Yeah, that was like a really huge case, and I broke the news at that point of him being alive. And by the way, Russians put that on that website. They included that story there as a description of me being a bad person for Russians. And
So
but
who would you say your primary audience was? Is it overseas Ukrainians or the public abroad who are interested in Ukraine, or do you have an actual Russian audience that gets them so upset?
I think lately I've been publishing a lot of things in English, and so my reporting impacting actually informational space in the United States, and this is the space that Russia doesn't want to be impacted by truth. And they have a lot of efforts to put a lot of propaganda into the United States, and it's very well known fact by a lot of confirmed by many administrations and secret services of United States that Russia does a lot of online activities to promote propaganda among American people. And I think that could have been one of the things that they didn't like. And also, it's not only I think, because they wrote it on that website that I supposedly was promoting Ukrainian propaganda among officials in United Nations and in the Congress, and they were actually including. But with a description of how I am damaging Russia, they were describing my work in the United States.
Mm. Just a bit of a digression. You reminded me, I went to the inauguration of the Ukrainian mission to the UN.
Oh, wow.
But you know,
Which one? The newest one?
well, what I was about to say was that Ukraine and Belarus were already members. They've been members since 1945, so they actually had a couple of diplomats who could step into the breach when Ukraine gained independence, and they set up the mission there and then. And there were different days. The Russians were very cooperative. They allowed them facilities. They gave them a share of the Russian mission. Different times, different times.
I mean, I would love to clarify that. First of all, Ukraine is one of the countries who was a member of, how you call it, the one who been establishing the United Nations.
Yes, the founder member.
Yes, the founding member. Thank you so much. But we need to also clarify the fact that although Ukraine was not only participating, but Ukrainian diplomats were writing some of the basic things, fundamental things of how United Nations should operate with the thinking of independent Ukraine. And there are a lot of things that they were implementing in the creation of United Nations for future preservation of Ukrainian independence. Ukrainian diplomats did it at that time. But in the same time, when you're saying that Russians were more hospital or like open to Ukrainians and Belarusians in the United Nations, we need to understand that they did it not because they're nice people, just because they wanted to use Ukrainian and Belarusian votes in any possible activities in the United Nations, and they basically allow Ukraine and Belarus to be a founding members and be a part of the beginning of United Nations just because
Well,
they wanted to have more countries involved on their side.
well, Stalin actually wanted all of the constituent republics to have seats, but if I remember rightly, Roosevelt said, "Okay, but all of the U.S. states have to have seats as well." And Stalin sat
Yeah,
down and
this
did the math and said, "No, no, let's stick with Ukraine and Belarus."
I didn't know that, but that's a
Yes,
very good
yes, that was
point,
the
which
counter
proves.
threat. It was the different times. Like I said, it was.
But that's a
Um,
good point to prove the fact that they're only pursuing their personal dictatorship interests,
but
Russians.
I know I honestly, genuinely think that at the time there was the reformists in the Russian mission were, how should we say, they were benign about it. They took it seriously. I don't think Yeltsin ever took it seriously. He wanted to split the Soviet Union so he could recombine it with him on top. It was a means of getting rid of Gorbachev, not to
I mean,
not to advance independence. But that's not what we're talking about now. So
yeah.
we shouldn't stray
But
too far.
I would just say that I would be very cautious with trusting Russians on any of their how you call it reasoning of doing anything.
Well, set on the other side, I mean, one of the reasons that you are very genuine reason to be to feel threatened is the number of Russian dissidents in places like Britain who have been poisoned and killed. So, it shows that there are indeed good people and they've paid a price for it. So we should not neglect that, even the, even if we support Ukrainian independence and integrity in the face of special military operation. Notice I always say that with quotes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know that. I
I,
know
I,
that because that's
I know that he was only kidding when he said it. And of course, he probably would have got away with it if it had just been the 2 weeks that he thought it would take. But so any other Ukrainian journalists under threat that you know of?
actually in that list. I haven't seen many. Definitely none in the United States. There were American officials like Senator Lindsey Graham. There were European officials like Kaja Kallas, and there was one Russian actually journalist. I forgot his name, but. I wouldn't say that he's very oppositionist, but probably Russians just doesn't like what he says. But he's not in Russia. He left, if I'm not mistaken, after big scale invasion started. They have a separate, how you call it, like folders in this website when like subgroups when there are dangerous dissidents, there are propagandists, there are other, I'm like among propagandists, and you can find different, it could be political officials, etc. I've seen I haven't seen anyone, any other Ukrainian journalists who work in United States for sure. I think there were few who are working in Ukraine though.
Now as the Foreign Press Association, we've been concerned because, well, many of our journalists have had pressure from their home governments if they haven't been towing the line. They've faced sort of financial and political recriminations. And recently, what's concerned us is the same thing's happening to people from the US side as well. If people don't toe the White House line, they've been getting threats, non-renewal of visas, close examination at the border, possible detention and disappearance from ICE. I mean, it's we've seen that we saw the future in Russia, and now it seems to be catching up with us here. So, have you had any experience because by supporting Ukraine, you are implicitly, how should we say, not marching in step with the line from the people in the White House now. Have you had any repercussions from there?
I would say even you said supporting Ukraine. I would not even say that if I may say that I'm support Ukraine. When I'm telling my story, I'm telling a truth. And when you
Okay, a
hear the
very good
truth,
point. Of
it's
course, yes, we support the truth, even if it's
yeah.
inconvenient for people like Moscow
Uh,
or Washington.
Yeah, when you support the truth, it's becoming impossible to not support Ukraine. So because the truth is definitely on Ukraine side, and that's what is the case. It's not. I wouldn't say it as a just. I don't want to also sound like I'm not supporting Ukraine, but but the honest, objective reality is the fact that I'm just informing the about objective information, and that objective information is something that Russia wants to hide, Russia wants to be vanished, and that is why it's becoming a voice of supporting Ukraine. That's one thing. About the current state of affairs regarding media in the United States, let's come back to the fact that I'm from Voice of America, the agency that was closed, unfortunately, under this administration. I haven't had any problems with my coverage, and I hope I will not have any problems with my coverage. I also think that closing Voice of America was a mistake, and I sincerely have a hope that there would be a point of realization that that was a mistake for United States in the first place, because it was a voice of United States. It's a voice of America after all. It's in a name in a world which existed since World War II, more than 80 years, and it had the big support group in all the world. People had a great trust in this agency, and so it was a great voice about the truth, what is going on, and basically in Ukraine, for example, if we're talking about some more older times, Ukrainians find out about the Chernobyl catastrophe because of Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which is under the same umbrella. It's USAGM. So they didn't know about what happened from the USSR government, which is also obvious. We shouldn't be surprised by that, but this is how they found out about this information. And also, while I was working Voice of America, a lot of people on occupied territories, they were texting me, they were coming in our comments, they were watching very closely because they were following each step of the United States as a beacon of hope and democracy. And what is very important to mention as well, it's not that easy to watch Voice of America from occupied territories because they needed to log in under fake names to hide it as much as possible because you do know that they're very mercilessly prosecuting anyone who they would find on their phones any information from independent sources. They literally torturing and killing people, and I'm not exaggerating, for just watching something that not aligned with their propaganda. And so it was very risky for Ukrainians under occupied territories to watch Voice of America, but they were very much actively doing that from Donbas, from Crimea, and they were texting us, and they were watching each single story that we were covering, and it showed how much necessity existed in this source of information. So my personal hope that this thing would be reestablished because it was it had a huge impact in the world, and I'm only describing Ukraine right now, but we had 48 language services. It's 48 spots on this planet who had connection, who were connected, plugged into this source of information, and that was actually very good for the United States from the first place. So my personal hope that
Well,
that
there's
would
different
be
days as well, because the Voice of America did have some independence in the past. I can't imagine Washington at the moment allowing such independence if it were reinstated. But and information is extremely important in this area because, well, two relevant but random facts that come up is the very first foreign translation of George Orwell's 1984 was into Ukrainian, as you almost certainly know. And they actually produced an edition which he gave the copyright of for free, which is a very noble thing for a struggling author to do. But the second was it was the information blackout over Chernobyl that was played a huge contributing factor in the downfall of the USSR. I mean, I think recently, I wasn't sure it was out before. I only recently saw that the Soviets were actually seeding clouds to make sure the radioactivity fell on Belarus rather than on Moscow, which doesn't seem to have affected Lukashenko's predilections for Moscow,
yeah.
even after all this time. But obviously, information is extremely important, and we often get reports here from sort of pro-Russians that Ukraine is involved in censoring journalism there. Have you any comments on that?
I mean, if Russians saying that, it's probably some injected agents that they wanted to promote in Ukraine, and this is who they are protecting. Let's face it, they will never protect anyone who actually says the truth, and I'm a vivid example of it. So definitely they would protect any propagandist there because they want to influence Ukrainian minds as well to convince them to surrender because this is also reason why they're targeting civilians constantly right now because they're not capable to win the war for the more than 12 years now. We need to also be very honest with the numbers and years.
Yes,
It's
it's a
not a
lot more than
4 year,
4 years. Crimea. It's
yes. Crimea, Donbas. Donbas has the most fortifications there, and that is why in this negotiation process they want to get Donbas by diplomatic means because they cannot take it by force more than 12 years now.
they want a
So,
clear title for it. Yes, it's like occupiers, and there's no way under the United Nations Charter they can do unless the
I
United
mean,
Nations.
but they haven't occupied it fully. They have only part of it. And they want to take another part with all of those fortifications throughout the negotiation process. They want to take all of it. And this is what they're saying, their narrative, that we're going to take it anyway, in any case. So why wouldn't you just give it to us and we will stop shooting? And we will stop, and it's going to be ceasefire. And when they're saying we're going to take it anyways, in any case, they haven't been able, I'm repeating myself, to take it more than 12 years now. And this is one of the most fortified territories by Ukrainians. It has fortifications which have been built since 2014, and that's precisely the reason why they cannot go further. It's like one of the biggest source of protection for Ukrainians, and that is why actually we have this how you call it pause or like not moving forward with negotiations that we
Mm.
currently observing. But it's not the only reason, because I don't think that those negotiations have any future in general. But that's one of the reasons.
So, what, in your personal predicament as a correspondent, what measures have you taken, can you take against the consequences of the doxing?
That's a good question. It's actually a very big problem because basically it's either me changing my address and like changing all the stuff that they have and constantly running from that. Either like my position personally that I took is to inform as many people about it. And as I said, there is a current investigation on FBI level happening about it, and I have two reasons for that. First reason, because no crime should be silent, and this is a crime. You cannot target journalists for their work. You cannot do those kind of websites if you not agree with any information that you hear. It's the first thing, and as a journalist, I think it's something that should be informed. Also, in history, in the future, those things should be preserved. All of that information of Russian activities that should be preserved for future. Mm, I hope international court hearings about the Russian war, GOG, and it's the first reason. It's first thing that I think what should one probably do. What I decided to do is to inform. And actually, I very appreciate you for responding very fast and taking very seriously this case. And the second thing might sound more sad, but in case of anything happens, I would love for people to know who's been threatening me. I think it's important for people to be informed.
Yes, it's extremely important. In the meantime, I think we should be winding up soon. But I think one of the points I would just a word of advice: stay away with people with sh umbrellas with sharp points.
Yeah, and don't take any liquids from unknown people
Yes,
because
beware perfume samples.
yeah, perfume samples. I mean, but like if being completely objective, also Russians been targeting a lot with poisoning, Novichok, and all of those things. So that's not a unfortunately, it's not a movie scenario we're talking about, but more reality
Well,
quoting.
it's actually very difficult to it's difficult to actually if you didn't know it was happening, you wouldn't believe the you wouldn't
100%.
believe the stunts that they've got up to.
100%. That's also true. It sounds like it was, it sounds like it's scenario for some movie. It sounds like it's been made up, but that's actually what they do right now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So so beware of any movie scenario. How you call it? Danger. Because when you're dealing with such a dictatorships, anything is possible.
Yeah. In fact, before I say goodbye, I may as well get in a PSA for myself. The last book I wrote on the UN was Untold, the real story of the United Nations in peace and war, which was a sort of rewriting of the UN for beginners. Uh, Many years. I wrote the UN for beginners for Heaven help us, the 50th anniversary of the UN. We're now on the 80th. So the organization's creaking a bit. But
Yeah, we'll see.
look,
We'll see.
thank you very much. This is Katerina. This has been interesting, and do get in touch if there's any other repercussions or updates for the story, and we'll do our best to publicize it with the members and get what support. If you need any help, give us a call. So,
Thank you, Ian. And if I may just say a separate thank you for Foreign Press Association. It's an amazing thing that you're doing. And it's a very great thing to have people who are aligned together for protecting this truth, because I think there is nothing new under the sun that the truth should always be protected, because there were always a lot of people who've been attacking true information. Any because there are, because any crime is always afraid of information, of being revealed. So truth was always under the attack, and it's very good to have any organization or alignments of people who are trying to protect it.
well, thanks very much, Katerina. Do keep in touch.
Thank you.